in collaboration with the Cyprus Mail. This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
Coming up this week, religious leaders in Cyprus come together to urge our political leaders to push ahead on the island's reunification.
This island is an island of many faiths and people of different traditions, but without any form of religious conflict.
Cypriot scientists are leading research which could greatly enhance our use of photovoltaic systems.
This project aims at increasing the penetration of renewable sources by developing new smart techniques, smart controllers that can enable the faster control of the output of renewable sources.
And still on renewables, youngsters in Nicosia are enjoying a fascinating hands-on exhibition about energies for a sustainable world.
We work at the Cyprus Institute on the real-life versions of some of these renewable energy forms. And we've always wondered how can we get across to the public what it is we're doing, because the science behind it is actually quite complex.
And One Woman at a Time expands its self-help human rights toolbox into Greek.
We're talking about women that we provide them the right to be self-litigants without any help. And if this help is needed, then we can offer this help.
There are many strands to the current Cyprus reunification talks, and many would say that the religious aspect, bearing in mind the conflict in our area, is something that's extremely important. The Office of the Religious Track of the Cyprus peace process plays an important role, and earlier this week the leaders of all the religious communities in Cyprus met together under the auspices of the Swedish ambassador. Also present was the UN Special Advisor on Cyprus, Espen Barth Eider. In short statements to the press after a working lunch, this is what he had to say.
It has been a very positive and very interesting lunch today here with His Beatitude, with the Archbishop, with the Mufti, with the Eminences and Excellencies gathered around me here. Once again, to meet with all the religious leaders of Cyprus who are working closely to support reunification and to support the idea that this island is an island of many faiths and people of different traditions, but without any form of religious conflict. And as last time we met, which is some time ago now, it was back in 2014 that I met with this group of leaders together, we talked about the fact that while in the neighborhood we see many conflicts that are political in nature, but that are being exploited and made into religious conflicts. This is not happening here, and there is no chance that this can happen in Cyprus, given the strong leadership and the strong will of the religious leaders to be supportive of peace and unity in Cyprus. It gives me strong inspiration to talk to these people, to listen to them, to take their advice on the general picture. And we also had the opportunity to discuss some more specific issues pertaining to the religious communities and the status of the religious communities and the holy sites, houses of worship and properties of the different religious organizations, which are all relevant questions for the negotiations that is being led by the two leaders, Mr. Mustafa Kinshi and Mr. Nikos Anastasiadis, and their negotiating teams on behalf of all Cypriots, but which I have the honor of facilitating on behalf of the UN. So it's been a very inspiring, very rich conversation, and I'm truly proud to be able to witness how leaders of all faiths can come together and work, as they did only a few days ago when they jointly visited the Committee of Missing Persons laboratory in the buffer zone. I think this gives added hope for the peace negotiations, the negotiations towards unification in Cyprus, and it's a great pleasure to be able to see this. And I want to recognize the Swedish ambassador and the Swedish embassy and the religious track for facilitating once again this very important work.
Espen Barth Ida addressing the press after a meeting of the religious leaders of Cyprus earlier this week.
Keep up to date with events in Cyprus and around the world with the Cyprus News Digest.
Researchers at the University of Cyprus are researching a project called the PV2 Grid, a next-generation grid-side converter with advanced control and power quality capabilities. The aim is to design and develop a new generation of inverters. How does our system work now? Because photovoltaics, of course, is something that we can make great use of in Cyprus with all our sunshine. Well, with us on the programme this week, we have the leader of the team, Associate Professor Ilias Kyriakidis. Ilias, in easy terms, can you explain the significance of the research you're doing and the use it will be put to?
Well, as with all renewable energy sources, either solar or wind energy, there is a maximum limit up to which we can integrate in our network. This is because wind and solar generation are variable. Wind sometimes stops blowing or changes wind speed, and something similar happens with the solar radiation. Maybe there are clouds or a difference in solar radiation. So this causes a change in generation. Conventional energy sources, which are right now at the larger percentage of generation, they cannot cope with these changes. They need some time to adapt. That is why we have limits in renewable energy generation, let's say 15 or 20%, so that these limits allow the conventional generation, which is the main aspect of our generation, to adapt to their changes. This project aims at increasing the penetration of renewable sources by developing new smart techniques, smart controllers that can enable the faster control of the output of renewable sources, and by this way we can adapt easier to weather variations that cause change to the generation.
So, if I understand correctly, it means that the power that is generated from renewables will be able to be absorbed by the grid much faster than it can be now, because at the moment I think a lot of the time you have to put the power you create into some form of battery and then into the grid. Is that right?
That is right. I mean, this will be the best solution, energy storage. But still, batteries or other forms of energy storage are an expensive solution, so it is not used widely. Energy is a commodity that has to be generated and put into the grid immediately. It's still not easy to be stored.
One of the problems, I think, is that because of the variability of the wind or the sun or whatever, you have, if you like, ups and downs in the actual generation of the power.
This is exactly the problem, yes.
So how is the work you're going to do going to change that?
In simple terms, we are going to regulate this variability and smooth it out. So this is
How can you do that? You can't create the wind or the sun.
We can control the output of the generation from the renewable sources.
But doesn't that mean that you will have to, in a sense, reduce it across the board?
Sometimes yes, but in power systems we have two forms of power, active power and reactive power. Active power is what we use, and this is a useful power. Reactive power is not really necessary, but it is necessary for the stability of the network. So we are going to interchange parts of active power into reactive power to enable greater stability of the network so that it can absorb a greater amount of active power from the renewables. This is a clever trick, let's say, that will enable us to utilize more active power from the grid than what we will be able to do with current controllers.
How will it affect, for example, the big problem, of course, is nighttime. No sun, and certainly here in Cyprus, very rarely much wind. So there's a huge drop, isn't there, as soon as it starts to get dark?
This is one of the biggest problems, and of course the solution to this is storage, which, as I mentioned, is still very expensive. But this solution that we are proposing can also be applied to wind energy systems. So we will be able, as you know, there's no sun in the night, so there's nothing you can do with solar generation, but we can control in the same way the wind generation and be able to control it in such a way as to alleviate this variability. At some points during the night there's a lot of wind in Cyprus, and because the load demand is very low, this creates even higher problems. In this case, we will have definitely to reduce the output of wind generation in order to retain the stability of the system. There is nothing better we can do. Otherwise, we will have to cut off wind completely, as is done now.
Now, how is this going to affect the amount of power we generate from renewables? Because the European Union has set many targets, and I think we're way down the list in Cyprus in terms of the percentage of energy coming from renewables. What difference will this project make? When will it be ready?
It will be ready in approximately 2 years from now. We expect to have the first solid results and integrate our results into converters for renewable systems. We are not doing that bad in terms of percentages. Our goal up to 2020 is 13% of electricity generation from renewable sources, and we are getting close to that. But this technology will enable us to install more photovoltaics, more wind generation, since we will be able to control it better. So this is a major advantage.
Will it have any impact on individual households? There was a programme a few years ago, I'm not sure if it's still going on, to encourage households to put in photovoltaics so that they could create their own power for their own consumption and indeed sell the excess to the grid. And this variability that we've been talking about was one of the huge problems as to why that never really worked.
You are exactly right. I mean, these programs are still going on. We should keep them going on. I wouldn't say that it doesn't work. It works, but there are some limits, as I mentioned at the beginning, basically because of stability problems that may be caused. For example, when the generation from renewables is higher than the load demand in some areas. So this technology will enable us to control better the output of renewable resources so that we can retain the stability of the network.
Once this project is over and presumably implemented across the grid in Cyprus, what more can be done so that I'm sure we'll have new bigger than 13% targets very soon from the European Union, and we do need to keep increasing it, don't we?
Yes, this technology will certainly help us increase that percentage, but in order to increase it even further, we need to invest in storage technologies. This is a key aspect that we have to look into, and our research team at the GEOS Research Center is also looking at these technologies as well.
So it looks like it could be good news on the energy front. That is Associate Professor Ilias Kyriakidis from the University of Cyprus, one of the lead researchers in the GEOS team, who are looking at ways that they can integrate photovoltaic systems into the electric power grid. And we'll stay with the topic of renewable energy, because yesterday I went down to the French Institute on Strovolos Avenue in central Nicosia, where there's an exhibition entitled Energies for a Sustainable World. It's a fascinating hands-on exhibition, and there I met Nick Jarot from the Cyprus Institute, who took me around. So that's lighting the light.
Lighting the light is a dynamo effect. Essentially, we're looking at kinetic energy here, the same that you used to have on old bicycles. When your wheel was turning, you could activate the light. So this is one form of energy.
Okay, and if we go over, there's another one here where you can store it. Now, explain this one to me.
Okay, here actually they're storing energy in the form of a flywheel. So essentially you're storing energy in the form, again, of kinetic energy. Once you get the wheel rolling, you've got movement, and movement, of course, is energy. At the Cyprus Institute, we store energy in a different way, of course. We store it in the form of heat.
So these are all designed. Who built all these machines?
So the Centre Sciences of a region in France called the Région Centre, which is the central region of France, they've been doing this traveling exhibition. It's gone to 25, 26 countries all over the world. And wherever they go, they co-organize it with local scientific institutions. So in Cyprus, the French Institute decided to work with the Cyprus Institute, where I work, because we actually work in a lot of the exhibits you'll see around here in terms of energy storage, in terms of cogeneration, in terms of solar power. We actually work on the real thing. So it was a nice way for us to join forces.
We've got probably half a dozen youngsters here going around all these tables and pressing the buttons and having fun, basically, which is what it's all about, because I guess if you can get them interested at this age, and none of them look to be more than 7 or 8 years old, then you've possibly engendered a love for science that maybe isn't there. Is this something you think that in schools we need to make science more fun?
Oh, absolutely. I think that most people who work in science because either they had an inspiring teacher as a role model, or they were inspired by the science lessons that they were doing. If, for example, those who were allowed to have hands-on chemistry classes where they could do their own experiments are much more likely to be interested in chemistry in the future. I think this exhibition is important not just to get children interested in science, but also in renewable energies. I think this will be the generation that will pay the price for our mistakes and previous generations' mistakes, and this is also the last generation that will have a chance to fix it. So it's very important that they get interested in this from a very young age.
And in terms of bringing on the grassroots and the young people, in Cyprus, I mean, you work at the Cyprus Institute. Is there a lot of interest in science in Cyprus? It does seem to me to have picked up in the last maybe 10 or 12 years.
I think until recently there was maybe more interest in engineering than science, and also maybe business-related skills. But I think certainly in the last few years it seems to have picked up among the younger generation.
Right, now tell us then, the exhibition you said is travelling, but it's in Nicosia for some considerable time until March, I think.
This exhibition essentially opened yesterday, and it will be here until the 4th of March. So schools will be visiting, individuals can visit with their families even on Saturdays until 6:30, I think. So it's really open to the wider public.
And the only thing I notice is that it's in English and French, which might be a little bit of a disadvantage to Greek-speaking students.
I guess it's in English and French, the exhibition, because it's a travelling exhibition, and in most countries, if you use either English or French, you'll be able to get through, and maybe there are not enough resources to translate it wherever it goes. But there are people on hand who can explain in Greek what this is all about.
What each of these exhibits does.
Yes.
And it's very hard to describe it when you can't actually see it, but basically it's a very simple idea, and that's that you've got your panels explaining each table, and then this large space with, almost a couple of dozen tables, each one with a working model of what it's trying to demonstrate. So it's a fantastic idea. It's not the first time, I think, that things like this have happened, but I think it's the first time in Cyprus.
I think the concept is brilliant. I mean, we work at the Cyprus Institute on the real-life versions of some of these renewable energy forms, and we've always wondered how can we get across to the public what it is we're doing, because the science behind it is actually quite complex. And this is a way they've captured each of these technologies in a small box. I think it's wonderful.
And you'll have a chance to catch that exhibition. It's on until March the 4th at the French Institute in Strovolos Avenue in Nicosia. Energies for a Sustainable World.
Listen online to the Cyprus News Digest on YouTube or at cyprusmail.libsyn.com. The latest program is uploaded every Friday, and if you missed one, you can catch up there.
One Woman at a Time, or OWAT as it's known, is now available in Greek. It's all designed to facilitate women particularly, but also men who suffer abuse at home. Joining us today we have Dr. Anna Plevri, who's a lawyer and a lecturer in law, and also Alexandra Hagidagi, who is the web developer collaborator who has been responsible for extending the reach of OWAT from English speakers to Greek speakers. First of all, maybe, Anna, can you just outline the thinking behind one woman at a time?
One woman at a time guides abused women to be empowered and places the law in their hands. The main goal for women is to know their human rights and to become self-represented litigants. That's the main goal for one woman at a time.
So you're talking about women who probably can't afford a lawyer,
yes,
who are being abused, and it's not just physical abuse.
Yes, of course. Violence is only one form of abuse. There are many forms of abuse that they not include violence, such as threatening, intimidation, or possessive behavior, or many other forms of non-violent behaviors that are abuse.
And when you say empowering women to become litigants, you're actually making available to them through your website,
yes,
the forms and the advice that they need in order to represent themselves in court.
Right, you're right. Through the website, a woman can download the form in Greek or in English. And hopefully soon we're going to have in other languages too, Arabic or Russian, and then she can practice her right to the court for access to the court, and without any other need of help from a lawyer, because many of these women they can't afford a lawyer. So although they do live in a violent situation, in a violent environment, they can't afford a lawyer, and their human rights are abused.
And we're not just talking about possible divorce proceedings or something, we're talking about proceedings for physical protection. How do the courts here in Cyprus view this?
Well, it's something new for the Cypriot courts, actually, yeah. But the court also recognized that this is a human rights violation. So, on this basis, yes, they will accept a claim for civil protection. So, if I am an abused woman, I have the right to have an order to protect my right to no contact from the abuser.
And what about the centres that you've got in Cyprus that I think also do offer advice to women and, if need be, some form of legal advice?
Well, there are the centres, yes, that they can offer legal advice, but this is something else. We're talking about women that we provide them the right to be self-litigants without any help. And if this help is needed, then we can offer this help.
Now, we'll come to you, if we may, Alexandra. You're the web developer of the site, and it went up originally, I think, well over a year ago in English.
Yes.
Are you tracking how many people visit it? Have you got that facility to do that, and seen how popular it is now that you've also just launched it in Greek, and I think had some fairly good publicity about the fact that it's now available to people who only speak Greek?
Yes, we're actually very happy about the publicity that it has gotten. We have managed to get into various newspapers and online articles, so people are getting introduced to this new idea here. We have very good response from the community until now. We did have originally statistics for the English website. We will now have to set up a new counter, and we should have that information soon. If you check back with us, then we can provide that for you.
Anna mentioned that you're going to be doing Arabic and Russian as well, so presumably that involves drawing in other web-savvy people to do it in those languages. How easy is it to find people who are willing to give up their time to do this? Because you're volunteers, aren't you?
Yeah, we are. To be honest, we have a growing community with lawyers, people who have knowledge in many languages. They are the ones who help to do the actual translation, and I actually apply that translation to the website, so we don't need any more specific technical help.
You just need people who can help you do the translation into those languages.
And from there on, I can handle putting that on myself.
Now, if you're online, of course, you're able to be accessed from anywhere in the world. Are you finding that this is something that people in other countries who don't have such an active organisation in their country can make use of, or does it have to be pre-agreed with the family courts and the justice system in each country?
Well, we are hoping that this will be an international clause, let's say. Now, on the legal side of things, I'm not sure if it will actually be applicable, but from what I understand, there is an interest, and we do have international women who actually try to contact us. So on the legal part, maybe you should ask
If you
Anna.
permit me, this one has to do with this fact. In order a woman or a man to apply to court for a claim for access to court, the domestic legislation has to allows the self-representation in court. In Cyprus, this legislation there is. So a person can represent himself in court. Let's say in other countries it's not the same. I mean, in Greece it's not. You can't go to court without a lawyer. But in Cyprus you can.
And what about success stories? Do you have any? Because we said it's only just been launched in Greek, but I'm sure that you've had interest from non-Greek speakers so far.
Yes, we have. And actually this is a very nice example for other states to do the same, to replicate this nice try and to do in their states too. And we do have success stories. I can't say names, so you understand.
No, but numbers? I mean, how many women have made use of this and achieved their desired end to be left alone by their abuser?
I don't have an exact number, but I know that there are many. I don't have an exact number.
And where do you go from here? What else has got to be done through OWAT? What you must have further goals, I'm sure, not just to expand it to other nationalities and in Cyprus and, of course, as you said, in other countries. But is there any more that can be done here in Cyprus to facilitate abused people? And do tell me as well about the men, because although it's called One Woman at a Time, it's freely available for men as well.
Of course, it's freely available for men, and all the forms are gender neutral. There is no restriction on that. So if a man is an abused man, yes, he can have access and he can have the same protection as a woman. Regarding the other question, we are going to try to put this very nice effort into Cypriot legislation. Me personally, I'm going to try to, through the Minister of Justice, to propose to them this very nice try in order to be a specific legislation regarding these rights.
Why do you need that if it's already working?
Because then it's going to be more powerful, and no court and no organization and no institution can have another argument on that, because it's going to be in a specific law. Now it's based on the broader legislation about human rights. But if there is a domestic law that says, well, you can do that, this is going to be better, yes, and more strong.
Now, on the website, you have the forms to download, you have advice, you even talk, I think, about what people's human rights are.
Of course.
How widespread is the lack of understanding in citizens about what their human rights are?
Most of them, they don't know even one of the human rights. Most of the people, they don't know that they have a human right to privacy. Most of them, they don't know that they have a human right to access to court. These are basic human rights, but they don't know it. And that's a shame, because it's a matter of education, and it should be, for me, it should be a course in primary schools.
Now, if we go back to the forms that are downloadable and you can fill them in, let's say I've done that. What do I do next? And how long is this going to take?
Print them, go to court, file them, and you are done. And then you wait.
And how long on average do you wait? Because one of the problems we have in Cyprus is the backlog of court hearings and so on.
That's true. This has to do with the court system. And in cases that there are emergency, well, you don't have to wait too much. But it depends from the specific judge or from the welfare office if they are going to ask for a postpone of their day in court. But this is an issue that we can control, the time that you're going to need in court. But we can help to have your day in court.
And on a practical level, assuming that I have indeed downloaded, filled in the forms, gone to the court, filed them, and I presume there's a small cost involved in that, is there?
No, there's no cost.
So I can just file the papers at court?
Yes.
Suppose the person who's abusing me finds out I've done that. Is there any way for them to find out? Because that maybe would tip a situation from being unacceptable to being an emergency.
Yes, you are right, but this person won't find out because at the first step it's an ex parte procedure, which means that once you got your order, then you are protected. And that's the only phase that this person will know after you have your protection order.
So they don't call the abuser to court to answer whatever and possibly defend themselves?
In this kind of procedures, no. After you have your order, if this person has something to say that it's not what I say, yes, then there is a stage for that, another court stage for that.
And then presumably you'd need lawyers?
Yes.
Okay, but it's cutting out the lawyer part at the very beginning. Alexandra, you're a web brander. When you started work on the OWAT website, what actually was your aim and what is the branding you're working at now to get it out there?
Well, the branding was done initially by Anna Bujovcevic and Darina Dombek. They are the ones who helped initially to create the image of OWAT. Aphrodite is one of the main images we want to portray, as she had power and justice, and that's what we want women and men, of course, to have everywhere. So we are just following that branding and trying to make it stronger by portraying OWAT, of course, now with all the publicity. So we are just trying to do the best job with the content and what we give out, and hopefully that's what will help from here on, apart from the branding, of course.
To empower people who are being abused, both men and women. And you can find out more if you go to www.owat, which is OWAAT-CY.com. And that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. I hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.